In a little over 2 decades, India will mark a century of independence, and sitting in the nation's classrooms right now are 250 million students, the exact generation that will serve as the workforce for that centenary. Take a look at this framework. It maps out 3 specific national targets converging on the year 2047. First, building a $30 trillion fully developed economy, what policy frameworks call Viksit Bharat. Second, achieving total self-reliance in critical sectors like defense and semiconductors. And third, pushing the entire nation to carbon neutrality by 2070. But as you can see right here on the model, that timeline hits a massive roadblock. A system built on rote memorization and passing standardized exams is exceptionally good at producing test takers. It cannot, however, produce the millions of creative, adaptable innovators required to hit those 3 specific targets. To bypass that barrier, the 9.6 million educators managing this system must pivot away from the traditional model of delivering information from the front. They are now required to facilitate active innovation, mentoring students as they apply theory to complex, real-world problems. Restructuring the pedagogical engine of the world's largest formal learning network is the necessary first step toward reaching these macroeconomic goals. Major institutional boards like the CBSE and ICSE are already forcing this transition. They are swapping out standard memorization tests for competency-based rubrics. Students are graded on their ability to solve real-world problems and defend their research, rather than their ability to recite a textbook. In the STEM subjects, teachers are mapping their lessons directly to the national push for self-reliance. When physics teachers cover solid-state mechanics, they are actively linking the theory to the engineering required for India's emerging semiconductor industry. Foundational math classes are replacing abstract theory with data analytics and financial modeling. Students learn Python and evaluate real trade balances, building the precise statistical literacy needed to staff a massive digital economy. We can already see the results of this digital literacy playing out in real time. India exports digital public infrastructure, like the UPI systems powering frictionless commerce at a street-level vegetable market, to the rest of the world. To maintain that lead, high school science labs are being physically converted into startup incubators. Students are required to identify a local problem, design a hardware or software prototype, and pitch a minimum viable product before they graduate. STEM education has dropped the pretense of generic academic achievement. It is actively engineering the exact technical workforce required to scale a $30 trillion digital economy. But technical supremacy has a ceiling if it isn't paired with cross-cultural empathy and narrative clarity. That's where the humanities step in. Language and literature classes draw on the historical writings of figures like Rabindranath Tagore to build social cohesion. Students learn to navigate multiple regional languages and cultural identities, giving them a distinct advantage when managing global organizations. In civics and history, educators use the framing texts of B.R. Ambedkar to interrogate structural inequalities. Students move past memorizing dates and start actively evaluating how democratic institutions enforce accountability. Those classroom debate clubs and Model UN simulations act as the training ground for India's actual geopolitical strategy. The students learning diplomatic language today are preparing to negotiate in multipolar forums like the G20. A truly developed nation requires citizens with a dual capability: the hard skills to write the code and the soft skills to navigate complex global diplomacy while remaining deeply rooted in their own cultural identity. Then there is the 2070 net zero target. Reaching carbon neutrality requires a policy known as the Green Teacher Mandate, which essentially turns every educator, regardless of their subject, into a sustainability officer. This plays out through Mission Life, the lifestyle for environment framework. Teachers instruct students on micro-actions, choosing seasonal food, reducing single-use plastics, or pledging to cycle. When multiplied by hundreds of millions of students, these tiny daily choices aggregate into massive national carbon reductions. Classes are moving outdoors. Instead of reading about climate change in a textbook, students take water samples, map local river basins, and track urban heat islands in their own neighborhoods. And the educational facilities themselves serve as active infrastructure projects. Schools execute their own energy audits and install extensive solar panel arrays, converting their rooftops into active nodes on the renewable energy grid. Reaching carbon neutrality by 2070 is a mathematical impossibility unless the current generation is taught to treat the circular economy as a default operating system, rather than a fringe theory. So, how does a single teacher begin this transition? They follow a highly structured, granular timeline starting on day 1. In Term 1, teachers redesign units to replace rote memorization with competency-based frameworks. By year 1, cross-subject integration tackles local issues like regional water scarcity. In year 2, assessments demand real-world impact, like programming an agricultural drone for a village. The sweeping macro vision of a developed 2047 is constructed entirely upon this micro-level timeline of an individual teacher's daily lesson planning. Fast forward to the Centenary. The students sitting at those nodular workshop benches today have stepped into their roles, managing the world's third-largest economy. The collaborative resilience and cross-cultural communication they learned in grade school directly enable them to navigate high-level international strategic partnerships and direct global trade. The engineers, diplomats, and innovators building Viksit Bharat are the direct result of the specific daily choices educators make today.